This is MMA Opinion's first video blog, live from the dorms at Fresno State. I want to walk you guys through some of my picks for UFC 89, Bisping versus Leben. If I don't sound that excited, it's because I'm tired, not because the event sucks. Clearly I've been up since 8 in the morning and I haven't shaved yet. It's already 11 o'clock out here and I gotta go to class in a little bit. It's not that I don't like college, I love college. But I don't like getting up at 8 in the morning. And of course, my stupid ass scheduled a class at 8 in the morning every single fucking day of the week. But let's get down to business and talk UFC 89. Now the first fight of the card is Paul Kelly versus Marcus Davis. Paul Kelly is a huge underdog and there's a really good reason for that. Marcus Davis has only lost one fight in his UFC career. And that was to a really good Michael Swick at 170 pounds. And he only lost that fight by a decision. Clearly Davis is a good fighter. That's not to say Paul Kelly is a bad fighter. Obviously he's decent because he made it to the UFC. But Marcus Davis has 4 finishes in the first round in the UFC, and this is just in the UFC. And he has 2 really good wins over Shoney Carter and Pete Spratt, who are very established veterans. I'm betting on a first round KO for Marcus Davis. Now the second fight on this card is between Luis Cane and my boy Ramos Sokaju. Now, I really like Sokaju, and I've kind of flip-flopped on this fight because for a while I didn't even think he had a snowball's chance in hell. That said, I've gone back and forth, and right now I'm still thinking that Sokaju can win this fight. And if he does, it's going to be by an explosive knockout, and it's going to be a fun fight to watch. The longer this fight goes, the worse his chances are, because in the higher probability it's going to end up on the ground. And, frankly, on the ground his game sucks. Should the fight hit the ground, though? It's not really his game, and he may very well get submitted, or just spend the entire fight on his back and end up losing a decision. At the moment, I'm going with Sokaju by round 1 knockout. That said, if the fight goes longer, my pick isn't going to stand up for very long. Chris Lytle versus Paul Kelly is getting talked about a lot, and I really have no fucking clue why. I mean, realistically, you have a UFC veteran versus a fighter with mediocre technical skills and, frankly, not enough experience to keep him in the fight. Chris Lytle is a huge favorite here too, and that's for a good reason. It's not that British MMA fighters aren't as good, it's that right now they're getting thrown to some very experienced American veterans, and Taylor is a pretty good example of that. My final verdict is Chris Lytle by a round 2 TKO. The most important fight of the card is probably Jardine versus Vera. Both of these guys have recent losses, and both of them really need a recovery badly. Vera has 2 losses as a heavyweight and came down to 205 to try and reconcile that, but his performance against Reese Andy was more or less mediocre. And Keith Jardine is pretty well established that he has bricks in his hands but glass in his jaw. After all, he's been knocked out twice in his last 4 fights. What makes this fight interesting isn't really that these guys really need to win this fight, it's that they match up really well against each other. Jardine has a really weird striking style and Brandon has very traditional Muay Thai. Any traditional Thai boxer will tell you that Brandon Vera's stand-up looks much better than Jardine. But anyone who watches the outcomes of their fights understands that Jardine's stand-up is weird, but it gets the job done. As long as the fight stays standing up, I'm going to lead towards Jardine because I don't think that Brandon Vera has ever beaten anyone with the technical skills that Jardine has. So I expect the Dean Amin to take home a big W to Greg Jackson, even if it's only by virtue of the judges. For the main event of the night, we have a fight between Michael Bisping and Chris Leben. I don't really understand why people like Michael Bisping. I don't personally think he's that great a fighter. He has a lot of potential, he's very athletic, and he makes a nice poster boy for the British fans. It also seems like all everybody remembers about Chris Leben is him getting knocked out by Anderson Silva, as if that's his entire career. Leben has 8 wins in the octagon, including a win over #1 contender Patrick Cote. The guy is clearly legit. He has great brawling skills, a good chin, and very underrated grappling. Still, Bisping has his moments where it gets too comfortable and you'll see him go from here to about here. And doesn't seem like a huge drop to most MMA fans, but it's enough for Leben to throw a looping punch around his hand, catch him in the jaw, and put him to sleep. Most fans, especially people really familiar with boxing, talk about looping punches as if it's something bad, not realizing that there are a lot of guys who have used looping punches to put most of their opponents to sleep. As far as which round it'll happen in, I'm thinking round 2. After all, Bisping generally keeps his hands pretty tight for most of the fight. I expect the moment to come after he lets out a good combination, feels a little more comfortable, starts to let his elbows flare out a little bit. Alright, this has been your first MMA opinion video blog, courtesy of Josh the Iron Man Stein. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoy the event this weekend. Peace.